Hey everyone! So for today's video, I thought it would be fun to take you around and show you all the things that aren't doing very well in my garden. So things that are either showing signs of disease, things that are damaged, things that might be on their way out. Because I feel like, especially on social media, most of what you see are the good things happening in the garden. I mean, that's what's most exciting to share, not everything that's dying in my garden. But I know when I first started gardening, I felt really bad every time I killed something. I didn't want anyone to know in case they thought that I wasn't a good gardener, but every gardener kills something. Even Monty Don, in a recent episode of Gardener's World, talked about some of the plants that he killed. So I thought it could be at least beneficial to show you what's not going that well in my garden. There's also a few things that I have questions on to see if either, yes, I need to remove that plant because it's too far gone, or any sort of tips for potential improvement on things that I might be having issues with. So let's go ahead and see what's not looking so pretty in my garden. Let's start over here on my flower cart. Now, for the most part, things are looking pretty good, but you might notice there are some empty spots right here. So I originally had 3 different plants. In fact, I think I still have all the tags. The one that is completely missing because it died was this, which was from Ball Horticultural. It was a Trixie Romance in Bloom combination. So what was on here again? I can't remember since I no longer have it, but it was Calibrachoa, Petunia, and Verbena. And that just completely kicked the bucket a few weeks ago. You can also see here what is left of the raspberry cheesecake petunia. So let me take you in close. I mean, this one branch looks okay, but everything in there is pretty close to death. And then we have the one remaining petunia, which is the Sweet Sunshine Magenta Sky. This one was my favorite one of the 3. So if one was going to live, I'm glad it's this one. But I think the main issue here was that the soil was not draining well enough, and we had a lot of rain, which happened before this morning glory canopy was really here to block some of the rain. I think this just stayed too moist for too long. Also, I'm finding that I think the soil I got from Home Depot was just really bad this year. Like, not very well draining at all. I mean, even right now, I don't know the last time I watered this. We haven't had rain for a few days and it just feels very hard and very stiff. So what I think I'm gonna do, well, I'm torn whether I pull this one completely or maybe just cut everything that's dead and leave this one little branch and see what happens. But I think I might get another petunia. I'll put different soil in here, obviously not on this side since this one is still planted. Different soil, I will add in some perlite to improve the drainage. But at least this one does seem to be filling out this space pretty nicely. So those are already some of the things that I have killed. Now over to my herb rack. I think, so all of my herbs seem to be further behind than previous years. And I'm also having some of those issues with flowers too. So I think that's just been a weather thing. But I'm also having some issues with specific herbs that usually do really well. I'd say in my garden, the things that I have the least issues with typically are my herbs, and that is just not happening this year. So my sage here just really started to grow. I haven't trimmed my sage. I don't think I've trimmed either of my thymes, which are usually much bushier by now. I have trimmed some of my pineapple sage here, which is doing well, some of my oregano, and some of my chocolate mint, which is also doing really well. The dill here is for the caterpillars that were on here and disappeared, so I'm just going to pretend that they were not eaten by wasps and that they're somewhere enjoying their life. But the 2 that I'm having the biggest issues with, and I would love to know if you have any tips on how to improve this, are my regular mint julep right here, and my lemon balm. So let me take you in closer. So hopefully you can kind of see what's happening. Basically, all of the leaves have yellow on them. It's kind of like a marbling of green and yellow. Again, I haven't cut this back at all, so it is still relatively small, but that is also kind of what's happening here on my mint julep, although it's not quite as yellow. I feel like it looks better on camera than it actually is. But there's just this marbling of the yellow on the leaves, and I haven't done anything different than previous years in terms of frequency of watering, in terms of fertilization. But I mean, this doesn't look like an herb that I really want to even use. So if you have any tips on what I can do to improve this, or if it's just worth at this point in the season getting rid of it and getting a new plant so that I can enjoy it for the second half of the season, let me know. The other plant I would love to get your opinion on is this tomato plant right here. So this one was a beefsteak tomato, or it is a beefsteak tomato, and you can see the leaves are curling. This is my first experience with leaf curl on a tomato, so I'm not really sure what to do. And like I find happens fairly often on the internet, when I look up an issue, I will get completely opposite opinions on what to do. So some people have said to leave it, it'll be fine. Some people have said get it out of your garden immediately. I also asked on Instagram, kind of got the same thing. Pull it, leave it, cut it back. So let me know what you think. But basically what I've at least think that I figured out is the bottom leaves here are relatively okay and normal looking. There is some fruit, although that hasn't really changed in size. But it's the newer leaves up at the top, which any that are coming in are staying curled. So from what I was reading online, it seems like if it was an environmental issue, so if it was too much water, not enough water, too much sun, then the lower leaves would be more impacted than the newer leaves, because it was the lower leaves that were experiencing the environmental impact or whatever it was. If it's the newer leaves, then it's more likely a virus. So since it is the newer leaves on this plant, not the older ones, that's what I'm leaning towards. But again, if you have more experience with leaf curl on tomatoes, let me know. I think I'm leaning towards pulling it, just so I don't have anything to worry about. But like I said, yeah, if you know what I should do with this tomato plant, let me know down below in the comments. More plants I'm having issues with include my 2 rhubarb plants. So there's one here, there's one tucked back there that I'll go to in just a second. But with this one, it started to grow. We had cold snap, it got stunted. It's only put out a few leaves. It's usually much bushier than this. And there is red on the edges of the leaves. Not this one, but most of the other ones. And I have read again that this is some sort of fungal issue or virus. Let me know if you have more experience with that. So that's what this one is looking like. Overall, it doesn't look terrible, but much fewer leaves than you would expect. Now coming over to this one, a lot more yellowing of the leaves, but it's also showing the same issue of red around some of the leaves. So I think I'm just going to come in and clean up all the ones that look bad, leave the ones that look good, and hopefully I'll get to harvest some of my rhubarb. And the last plants I think that I've been having issues with on the front deck at least are my dahlias, and I do have some on my back deck as well. But this is the longest it's ever taken for dahlias to bloom in my garden. All of the ones on the front deck here are new tubers that I got, but I started this one inside, I think back in April. It's just starting to form a bud there. This one I did start outside to replace ones that didn't sprout, and it's just kind of stuck at this size. I'm thinking, because again of all the rain that we got recently, and these are in plastic pots, which aren't as well draining, I'm thinking there might be some tuber rot going on, but unless it dies, like on the outside here, I'm not gonna do anything about it yet. It just really hasn't put on any growth at all for a few weeks now. This right here is my first dahlia flower, which just opened up today, and we are in the last part of July. Usually I have multiple blooms by the beginning of July, but at least she's really pretty. On to the back deck now. Not as many issues back here as up front. I don't know why. I do have, again, all my vegetables up front. It does have the more intense afternoon sun, so those might play a role, but everything is not perfect. First off, here is the furthest along dahlia flower here, and all of my dahlias back here, I overwintered in the garage, brought them inside late March, early April to kind of give them a head start, so they definitely should be blooming by now. Other issues I've been experiencing, scale on my lemon tree, which I think I'm at a good point now of kind of getting on top of it. The whole plant was covered, so it started inside. I brought it outside, which usually that takes care of it on its own. I'm just bringing it right outside, but the scale have persisted. Right now, I think, like I said, we're looking pretty good. I'm seeing some new growth. There is a lemon, but that definitely was an ongoing battle for a while. Now, I don't know if I'd really call this a fail or a problem, but it's definitely something I wasn't expecting. In this pot, there still are 3 plants. There was a begonia, there was a super bells, and there is this silver wave petunia. And I think you can see the silver wave petunia has basically taken over the entire pot. Begonia is still in there. Should probably deadhead that, like trying to poke through. Where is, oh, here, you didn't even see it right there, the super bells. The same exact thing is happening with this one over here. So now I know for the future that these wave petunias will take over the entire pot. There's only one petunia plant in each of those pots. Coming over here, have had some fungal issues on my rose, although right now it looks pretty well controlled, but I think you can see kind of the black spots in there on the older leaves. I just spray that with a fungicide. My morning glory haven't flowered yet, so I thought putting them, I had them on both decks, but I thought having them in the morning sun would mean that they would flower more than grow, but no flowers yet back here. And I haven't been adding like any nitrogen fertilizer for growth. I've only been adding fertilizer for bloom, so kind of see what happens there. Heading over to this corner of the garden, I mean, right here things look nice, but what you can't really see is this hydrangea that is slowly dying, and I'm not going to do anything about it yet. I'll probably replace it with something in the fall. I mean, it's not completely dead. There are some new leaves poking up in there, but I mean, you can see how unhappy this is. Basically, this was one of the hydrangeas that you get from the garden center that's been started early. They're not the best for actually putting in your garden, but I got it because I was impatient, so I put it here. And this is how it looks right now. But just so you can see, let me go show you the other hydrangeas that aren't started early inside the nurseries. So it's not flowering yet, but this is my wee bit grumpy hydrangea. You can see it just looks much happier. I don't know if it's gonna flower this year or not since it's just 1 year old, but I'm now moving away towards the hydrangeas that are already like pre-sprouted or pre-bloomed. I don't know what the technical term is, but basically started earlier inside just because transplanting them outside they don't do as well, but this one is looking great. Then I have 3 of the tiny quickfire hydrangeas. These both are 2 years old, and just something interesting, neither of these have produced any flowers, and I haven't done any pruning or anything like that because they are so small, but no flowers yet on these 2. However, on the one that I just got this year, so it's only 1 year old, so this one has been through quite a bit. First, it wasn't draining, and I don't know exactly what it was. I don't know if the pot was just sitting on a piece of the deck that's more elevated, so the water wasn't going out, but I came out after a storm and there was an inch of water just sitting on top of this pot. So I dumped that out, and then I tried to keep this inside for a few days. I definitely lost some leaves on the bottom, but so far now, it's looking okay. And this one obviously has flowered, so I think that's just interesting that this one, younger than the other 2, is flowering, not a lot of leaves. Whereas these, full of leaves and no flowers. And again, I haven't been treating them any differently. Now, I do love my raised beds here in the back, but I definitely think I overfilled them, maybe a bit too much. And there are some plants kind of growing in crazy directions. I actually think this bed's doing pretty okay with everything staying upright. This one here, I think as you can see, I have a nursery pot in there trying to keep this cosmos up and off of the aster, which is now over there. I mean, they all are still growing, so that's good. But I definitely should have been paying more attention, I think, as they were growing and making sure that they were in the right positions. Also interesting, there's a cosmos back there that has flowered and is small. And then I have these 2, same cosmos, which haven't flowered yet and are gigantic. So these are even in the same container and growing in completely different ways. Now let's come over to this furthest bed over on the right, which I think you can see even from here, there is a hole in the middle because this aster, which I absolutely love, it is the Bonita Shell Pink aster, kind of started to curve all the way forward instead of growing straight up, whereas this one and this one are both growing straight up. And these are the zinnias that I'm getting powdery mildew on. Let me come in here so you can see the leaves. Again, I've treated that with the fungicidal spray that I have, but I usually don't get powdery mildew. I know that that is one of the most common issues. Again, we had a lot of rain, a lot of humidity. I have also propped these up using some pots just to get more airflow in there. So hopefully now that I've treated it, it won't get any worse or spread. I will stay up on that, stay up on keeping them apart. But this is the bed that's definitely kind of the most wonky looking, especially looking from this angle. But if you just, you know, back up a few steps, it looks perfectly fine, which is the fun part of gardening. Just get the right angle and you'd never know. So those are the plants I'm currently having issues with in the garden, and that doesn't even include the plants that I've already completely killed and pulled. So what have I killed completely so far? Blueberries, pulled those, officially giving up on those. What else did I kill? I killed one lantana. That one kind of died on its own. Oh, you know what? There is one thing I forgot to show you that is kind of pathetic looking, but I'm keeping it around in the garden. I can't believe I almost forgot my poor, sweet little okra plants. So there are two. Let's first go down to this one. So these both got infested by aphids, and I kind of missed it at first. And you can see this one has only ever made one little leaf and one very tiny okra, but it's so cute that I can't bring myself to pull it, although I probably should. This one is starting to recover a bit. There's one okra there that's ready to harvest on the left, a couple more coming in, and it is starting to put out new growth. So this one might actually make it. Are there any aphids on it now? Yeah, there's still some stuff that I have to clean off, so I'll do that today. But yeah, this poor little one right here, I just can't bring myself to pull it. Okay, so now I think that's everything that I'm having issues with currently in the garden. Again, I mentioned I've already killed a number of plants, but we'll kind of see how it goes. I also still haven't had a huge amount of pests yet. I know they're coming. Like I said, we've had some aphids. I had scale on my lemon tree, but that was from when it was inside. I know the budworms are coming. I'm sure cucumber beetles are going to come at some point, so I'll just keep an eye out for those. But I just wanted to make it very obvious that not everything always looks good in the garden, and that's 100% normal. And I like to say, as long as I'm not killing more than I am killing in the garden, then I'm doing pretty well. So let me know your thoughts on anything I can do with my herbs and the tomato plant that has leaf curl, and let me know maybe what's not going well in your garden right now. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.